Hi guys, so this is one of two videos that I'm going to do, just short videos on the topic in Unit 1 of Development Dynamics. Now I'm going to go through top down and bottom up development strategies, and I'm going to do the second video. We'll look in particular at the pros and cons of top down and bottom up. But in this first one we're just going to look at some brief definitions, and we're going to look at breaking down an exam style question and what that involves. And you can use the information from this exam style question in lots of different exams if the command words are kind of the same. So we'll look at that in a second. So this is for development dynamics, and we're looking at top-down and bottom-up strategies to improve development in a country, in a low-income country or a middle-income country. So I'm going to run through some definitions with you. Top-down, in the textbook in Edexcel, we're talking about, in India, we're talking about a dam, making of the dam. And the main idea with a top-down strategy, if you remember, is that it's the government that decides what to do, and it's the government that implements that strategy. So that's really important. And in the second video I'll run through in a little bit more detail the pros and cons of each of these strategies. So the government decides, and there are no views of local people. And to remember that these top-down strategies are generally quite big projects, quite big infrastructure strategies, etc. So they're top-down because they come from the government and they trickle down to benefit lots and lots of people. That's the theory anyway. The second strategy is a bottom-up strategy, which is sometimes called intermediate technology, and we'll go over that again in the second video. And the example that we've got in the textbook is the biogas example. And I know with my group that I've been teaching this to, we've looked at the use of cows in Africa, and that the dung from the cows can be used to generate biogas because it's put in a big tank, etc. So this bottom-up strategy is used by local people, and local people are involved, and non-government organisations are generally involved, not the government but non-government organisations, which, if you remember, these are charities. So non-government organisations are charities, so often there's charities involved here, and these are much smaller scale. So you might argue that they've got a lot less of an impact, but they do involve local people. Local people are involved in decision making. So that's a very brief background to top down and bottom up, just for you to remember for the exam. Top down is big, the government's involved, and bottom up is local. Maybe it's often called intermediate technology as well, and it's from the bottom up and it involves local people, and it's much smaller scale. So now what we're going to do is we're going to look at a little exam style question. So this question says, for a named, it could be top down, it could be bottom up, project, evaluate its benefits and drawbacks. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to break down the question for you. Now this will generally be an 8-mark question, which means there are 4 marks for AO1, which means kind of the content and the facts and figures, and 4 marks for the evaluation part. So we need to break down the exam question. For a named, top down, so if the question asks for top down, we use this one, we use the large scale dam. If it says bottom up, we use the small scale biogas. Project, evaluate. Now remember what evaluate means. It means weigh up. So weigh up the pros and cons, and it even says here evaluate its benefits and drawbacks. So evaluate, weigh up, and then with evaluate you need to make a judgment as to overall, come to a conclusion and a judgment as to whether overall it's good or bad. It doesn't really matter which one you come down on, as long as you use a couple of points for and a couple of points against. So generally you'll be using 2 points for, 2 points against for your AO2, and then making sure that you pad them with detail. So then it says benefits obviously mean good points of the project, and drawbacks mean the bad points. Now if you're getting a little bit stuck in any question that asks you to evaluate benefits and drawbacks of a project or something like that, please remember that you can think about social, to do with the people. So what's the benefits and drawbacks for people living in the area? What are the benefits and drawbacks economically? So for the economy, so how does it make money or how doesn't it make money? And for the environment, and we need to make sure that we remember the environment means what's around the people. So that could be the natural environment, it could be the built environment, it could be environmental problems that the project causes, such as pollution, air pollution, land pollution, water pollution, etc. So if we're getting a little bit stuck, then always when we're asked to evaluate benefits and drawbacks, think of social, economic and environmental, and that should give you lots to answer. So as long as we think of the project, as long as we got the right project, as long as we weigh up the benefits and drawbacks and then come to some kind of conclusion. Again, like I said, it doesn't matter whether you agree or disagree. The examiner is looking for your judgment. It's looking for you to justify your answer, not that your answer is right or wrong. And then you should be okay for the 8 marks. So in the second video that's coming up after this, we'll look in a lot more detail the actual pros and cons, or the benefits and drawbacks of the top-down and bottom-up strategies.